Okay. Looks like we have one person here. We have one person so far. Hi,
Hello.
how are
Yeah,
you?
I'm good, very good. How are you?
Very well. Would you excuse me just one moment? We're waiting for the other people, but I need to get something to drink.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, so
Let's
I'll
wait.
just be waiting.
Mhm.
There goes my dog. Sweetie, not necessary to bark. Okay. Well, there's only two of us, but I say that there's not a moment to spare. So let's see if we can get started. Now, what I'd like to ask you is which test are you studying for? Are you studying for the school test or the state test or both?
So far only for the school test, and actually I've just started, so I completed only like one or a few lessons. Uh,
That's fine.
yeah, and as for me, I have a full-time position. I'm working in the United Nations, but I want to get a part-time job, and that's why I decided to get this school test with you, and later the New York state exam. And later, I just want to work a part-time salesperson.
Great. Great. Hello, Christina. Okay. So it doesn't matter that you have just started the course because what I always say is you have to learn the material, and it doesn't matter if you learn it early or you learn it late, you have to learn it before the test. So it doesn't matter when you learn it.
Yes, yes, I remember. This part you already watched about your experience. Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
this I remember.
Okay, so we have Christina and Wanda, and I would like to know from the two of you, are you studying for the school test or the state test or both? And is there anything in the course so far that you felt was particularly confusing or challenging?
Hi everyone. So currently I'm studying for both. So I actually already took a course before, but it's been a few years and I did everything. It's just that I kept on failing the state test. So I'm doing this all over again. So I've just been restudying everything. So as of right now, there hasn't been anything confusing. It's a little bit familiar. So um yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Sure. Okay, so what I usually do in this class is I just throw lots of questions at you that are the type of questions that you're going to see on the school test and the state test. And we go over them. And if we find when we're working together that there are certain areas that people are finding difficult, then we'll spend extra time on those. All right. Now, Wanda, do you feel like chiming in? Because you don't have to if you don't feel like it. If you just want to sit and listen, you're welcome to do that as well. That's what I do when I take classes. I don't say a single word when I take classes. I just sit and listen to whatever the teacher has to say. All right. All right. Let's try a law question. Now, can everybody see the chat?
Yes.
Okay, because what I do is I put questions, answers, and I put information into the chat. And then at the end of the class, what I do is I email the chat to everybody who was in the class. All right. So while I'm getting these questions together, oh, we have another person joining us. It might be a good idea. Oh, you're on the train just listening. Great, great. Okay, that's a very efficient use of time. Uh, what I'm going to do is, why don't you give me your email address now so that I can send everybody the transcript when we're done? And then in the meantime, I will start getting some questions ready for you. So if you can type your email address into the chat, that would be great. And at the end of the evening, I will send you a copy of everything we've done. Now, Wanda, if you're on the train, you can send me, oh, there you go. Okay, I was going to say that if you need to, you can send me your information later. All right, I'm starting with a question from the legal chapter, which I think is chapter 3. This question that I'm giving you right now is on both the school test and the state test. Because what schools try to do, all schools, is they try to make the school test as much like the state test as possible. So the question is, what is a trade fixture? Which of these is a trade fixture? Permanently attached wall-to-wall carpeting, a display case, desks and chairs, or elevator. Now, you can call out the answer or you can type it into the chat, whatever you feel like.
I just didn't learn it yet, so I just don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Well, okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. Now, the answer is the display case. Now, think about it this way. Think about a big store like Macy's or Best Buy or some store like that, okay? Now, a fixture is something that's part of the real estate. So like plumbing fixtures, like sinks and toilets are part of the real estate, or an elevator would be part of the real estate. But usually a fixture is something that's attached. But what if it's attached, but the landlord expects the company to remove it when they leave? Like, for example, if a jewelry store moves out, the landlord expects them to remove their display case, even though it's attached to the floor. Or when a hairdressing place moves out, the landlord expects them to take out their sinks, even though the sinks are plumbing fixtures. So they're going to ask you on the test, which is a trade fixture. Now, I see that a few more people have just joined us. So let me just tell you what we're doing. I'm firing questions at everybody. And what I would like you to do is give me in the chat your email address, because that way at the end of the class tonight, I will send the questions and the informational notes that I put into the chat, and I'll send it all to you at the end of the class tonight. So you don't have to take notes or anything. I mean, it's kind of silly. There's like 9 of us, so it's very silly for 9 people. Yeah, that happens. Sometimes you plunk it too fast. Um, it's silly for 9 of us to all keep the same notes. So I have appointed myself secretary for the class. So I'm going to, at the end of the class, I will give you all the notes. So a fixture is part of the real estate. It is usually attached. Like a sink is a plumbing fixture or an overhead light is an electrical fixture. A trade fixture is something that is attached, but landlord expects commercial tenant to remove it when tenant moves out. Like sinks in a hairdresser or a display case in a jewelry store. All right, so let's try some more. Now, people who have just arrived, what I would like you to tell me is if there was anything in the course that you found particularly confusing and would like to talk about. Now, I have a student who wrote me yesterday, and she said that she took the state test, and this question that I just gave you was on her test. So let me give you choices, okay? What is it called when your New York real estate license is good in other states? Cooperation, piloting, reciprocity, or subordination? Thank you. Answer is reciprocity. Now, for your interest, New York used to have reciprocity with about a dozen other states, but we got rid of it. June Lisa, your name is familiar. You've been in my class, haven't you?
Yes, yes, I have.
See?
Sorry, yes. Good
You know, it's
evening.
funny. Some people are good with faces. I'm good with names.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's funny. Last year, New York canceled reciprocity with everybody. So some students say to me, well, what about the other states? Did they cancel New York? Like if I move to Connecticut, will my license be good in Connecticut? And the bad news is you have to ask all 49 of the other states because it's up to them what they want their rules to be. Yeah. So if anybody from the other 49 states wants to come to New York, they're out of luck. They have to take the whole course and the test and pay for the license and all kinds of business. But if New York wants to go to other states, it's up to the other states what they want to do. Okay, so that question I know for a fact is on the test because a student wrote me yesterday and said that question was on the test. I think that's actually a new question that they put on since New York canceled reciprocity because it's been a very sensitive issue in the last couple years. All right, I'm going to try a math question. This is a math question that you are likely to see on both the school test and the state test. Those of you who just came in, I was saying earlier that the schools, all the schools in the state, try to make their test as much like the state as possible because, schools like Department of State is our boss. So we want to follow our bosses lead. So if our boss, Department of State, thinks certain things are important to put on the test, we're going to do it also. So a building sells for $700,000 at 9% cap rate. What was NOI? Does anybody remember what NOI is? NOI is net operating income, and they will use that abbreviation on the test. Now, those of you who haven't taken that chapter yet, let's talk about what NOI is. Net operating income is simply when you take a building's gross income and subtract the operating expenses. And you get net operating income. NOI is the most important number to know about a commercial building. And the reason for that is that if I said to you, how would you like to buy this building? Okay. Now, if you were buying a home, you would care what it looked like and what neighborhood it was in and what school district it was in and stuff like that. You would care about those things. But if I were going to sell you, oh, okay. If I were going to sell you a commercial building, you don't care if it's pretty. You don't care if it's in a good school district. You don't care if the neighbors are nice. What you care about is if I buy this building, how much money will I make? So people want to know, investors want to know if I buy this building, how much money will I make per year? And that's NOI. Okay, so has anybody met Irv yet? Does anybody remember who Irv is? Irv is a math equation. Okay. But I always dress him up in the class. I always dress him up like he's a guy. Okay. So Irv is an equation. And it stands for income divided by rate of return equals value. All right. So Irv helps us figure out the market value of a building based on its income. Okay, so in this question that we just did a moment ago, in this question, the market value of the building is 700,000 and the cap rate is 9%. Now, what is cap rate? Cap rate, so market value of the building in this question is 700,000. Cap rate is 9%. Cap rate means the rate of return investors are getting in a certain market for a certain type of building product. Now, by a building product, I mean like an apartment building or a hotel or a shopping center or something like that. That's what I mean by a building product. And when I say a certain market, well, the market could be downtown Buffalo. The market could be Tribeca. The market could be New Paltz. The market could be lots of different places. So the cap rate is going to change with the type of product, because you're going to have a different cap rate for apartment buildings than you have for office buildings. And it's going to change with the area because you're going to have a different cap rate in downtown Buffalo than you have in Tribeca, than you have in New Paltz. So how do you know what the cap rate is? Well, it's just market knowledge. So you just ask people. You can find cap rate. You can find cap rate by looking online, reading Wall Street Journal, or what I do, asking someone in the industry. Now, I'll give you an example. I was teaching a class one day, and I was teaching it in Manhattan, in Midtown West. And we were talking about Class C office buildings in Midtown West. So the product type is Class C office buildings. The market is Midtown West in Manhattan. And so I said to my students, well, I don't sell buildings in Manhattan. I don't know what the cap rate is. What's the cap rate for a Class C office building in Midtown West? And they told me, because these were my broker students. They already had a license and they were already working. So they had market knowledge. So they told me, oh, the cap rate for that type of product in that market would be about 3%, 3.5%. So it's not like secrets. You can find it out with doing research or asking somebody. Okay, so getting back to this question, we can put Irv in 3 different orders. Because anytime you have something with 3 factors in it, you can put it in 3 different orders. So we could say I divided by R equals V. I divided by V equals R. Or I equals R times V. The one we're going to choose is the one where the thing we don't know is by itself. So the thing we don't know is I. That's net operating income. So we're going to say I equals R times V. Once we get this far, we're in 3rd grade. We're doing 3rd grade math because we're going to say 700,000 value times 9% rate of return equals calculator time. There's my calculator. You are allowed to take a calculator to the state test, but it's not allowed to be a calculator like this. Okay, if you bring a calculator like this, they'll take it away from you. Okay, because this is a fancy one, and this one does logarithms and cosines and present value and future value and all kinds of stuff. So never bring a scientific calculator or a financial calculator or a real estate calculator. I basically just tell everybody, if your calculator costs more than $10, don't bring it. Bring an El Cheapo calculator from the dollar store and you'll be fine. Okay, we just need a calculator that does addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and maybe percentages. And like, that's it. Okay, so 700,000 times 9% equals, I got 63,000. Let's see if that's the right answer. Now, you will notice that what they do to you is, this is the school test, okay? What they do to you is one of the wrong answers is 6,300. Because I don't know about you, but I always get the wrong number of zeros when I do things. So you have to be careful because choice A is 6,300 and choice C, which is the right answer, is 63,000. And they are sneaky. They give you both choices. So the NOI is 63,000. And that's the answer. Okay, so do people feel comfortable with that? Do you feel comfortable with what we just did with Irv? Okay. See, the thing about the math is it's not that the arithmetic is hard. It's like, fourth grade arithmetic. It's basically multiplication and division, and you have to know percentages and decimals. That's it. It's fourth grade math. What's difficult about it is understanding why you're doing it. So I try to explain why you're doing it. Like, we just did the whole explanation of like a person who's buying a building. They don't care how much money the seller wants to get for the building. They care, if I buy this building, how much money will I make? So that's why we're doing Irv. Hi, June Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my issue. I just don't know when to use multiplication or division first. Like I was doing a practice exams and
Mhm.
I was a little bit confused on the math section, and I just didn't know when to do the multiplication part or when to do the division part of
Yeah.
the problem.
Well, for Irv, what I would recommend is I would recommend that everybody memorize the three kinds of Irv. Okay, because then all you have to do is you say, well, what don't I know? Oh, I don't know value. I'll use the first Irv. And then it tells you right in the equation whether to multiply or divide. Okay, or if it says, what's the cap rate? You go, oh, what I don't know is R. I better use the second one. And it tells you, what you're dividing by what. So I totally understand that. So I recommend memorizing the three kinds of Irv so that you always know when you are multiplying or dividing. Now, June Lisa, that was a very excellent question. I think a lot of people have that question. So let's go into it a little deeper, okay? I, for legal reasons, had to take the test in February. And I'll tell you what the legal reason was. I had two licenses and I let one of my licenses lapse during COVID. I didn't renew my license. And if you let your license lapse for more than 2 years, they make you take the test again. So I had to take the test. So when I took the test in February, there was an acres question. So it is possible you will get a question that requires you to convert square feet to acres. And what you do is if you know acres, you multiply by the conversion number 43560. If you know square feet, you divide by 43560. And you're going to remember this because usually square feet is a really big number. And acres is a really small number. 1 acre equals 43,560 square feet. So you can tell that square feet is going to be a lot bigger number than acres. Like 2 acres is going to be like 80,000 square feet, right? Or I'm sorry, 90,000 square feet. It's going to be a lot. Okay, so that's another way to remember. When you do tax, real property tax is all multiplication. So the equation is market value times assessment rate times tax rate equals annual tax. So if you get a real property tax question, which you probably will, you don't have to worry because that's always multiplication. Now, I'm going to give you a question that you will always, always see on the state test. Let me find it for you here. It's a question about real property tax. Here we go. If a property's market value, if they're supposed to say is, I want to warn you that students have reported to me that there are, and I've seen it myself, there are typos, there are grammatical errors, there are misspellings on the state test, and you just have to live with it, okay? They didn't proofread the state test, apparently. Okay, so if a property's market value is 180,000 and the community's uniform percentage for assessment is 60%, what is the property's assessed value? Okay, so it's real property tax question. What are we going to do?
Multiply.
You got it. Absolutely. Okay, so all we have to say is 180,000 value times assessment, which is 60%, equals 108 assessed value. Now, let me explain this for the people who haven't taken the real property tax chapter yet. In New York State, we are not taxed on the market value of our real estate. We are taxed on a percent of the market value, which is called the assessed value. Now, I love this. The reason I love it is that, let's say I have a property and it's worth $1 million, right? Okay. If you have a property that's worth $1 million, would you rather be taxed on $1 million or on 600,000? Definitely 600,000, right? So we love the assessment rate because the assessment rate lowers our tax. Okay, so we love this because being taxed on assessed value instead of market value lowers our tax. So let's go back to this question. Wouldn't you rather pay tax on 108,000 assessed value than 180,000 market value? Definitely, right? Okay, let's see if we can find another one of these tax questions, because you're going to feel pretty good about always knowing that when you get a tax question, it's going to be multiplication. So here's one. This is a question you will see on the school test. Market value is 250,000. Assessment is full value. What does that mean? It means the assessment is 100%. And there are parts of the state that are like that. Now, in New York, we are really lucky, because in New York, like if you own a co-op or a condo, our assessment rate is only 45%. So if you own a co-op or a condo and it has a market value of $1 million, you are only paying tax on 450,000. So we have a really good assessment rate in New York City. Okay, so what we do here is, this is a real estate question. I'm sorry, real property tax question. So all we have to do is multiply. So 250 market value times, well, we don't really have to say times 100%, because like if the market value is 250,000 times 100% is 250,000, but we can do it anyway. And then the tax rate is 5%. And so let's see what we get for the annual tax. I got 12,500. Let's see if that is the right answer. That's the right answer. That's the right answer on the school test. Now, I want to point out a difference that you will see between the school test and state test, is that the state test is much more wordy. It's very verbose. And I've had students who know the material, and they go and they take the state test and they have trouble with the test because they can't figure out what the questions are asking them, because they use a lot of really confusing language and they quote laws a lot. So let me see if I can give you an example of that. Now, this is the type of question that you might see on the state test, but you would not see it on the school test. The right to deviate due to a special hardship from the use of land prescribed by an existing zoning ordinance can be accomplished by applying for which of the following? Like, what does that even mean? What I would say it means is, I think it means the right to a zoning change due to a financial problem can be obtained from the city with, golly, I'm going to change that because it still sounds awkward. Okay. What gives a building owner the right to an exception to zoning law because of a special financial hardship? That's how I would say that. So let's try it again. The state says the right to deviate due to a special hardship from the use of land prescribed by an existing zoning ordinance can be accomplished by applying for which of the following? Okay, I'm saying what gives a building owner an exception to zoning law because of a special financial hardship. What we mean by special hardship is that the zoning law is causing the building owner to lose money. Okay, so anytime you see the word hardship, it has to do with a zoning variance. So let me give you the choices that you will see on the test. Okay, so variance, spot zoning, cluster zoning, or non-conforming use permit. So I think we kind of gave away the answer. The answer is variance, right? Now, those of you who have taken that chapter in the course, the example that I gave was this lady named Debbie, who she owned a house, but it was right next to some city construction. And nobody would buy her house. And she couldn't use the house for anything else because of the zoning. It was zoned residential. So she went to the city and she said, I'm losing money because of the zoning. The zoning says I can only use my house as a house. And nobody will buy my house because of all this loud, noisy, dirty construction going on for years. So she asked the city for a variance so that she could change her house into a pizza restaurant and sell pizza to all the city construction workers. And they gave her the variance because the zoning law was causing her financial damage. And would you believe she opened up the pizza restaurant and she made $1 million in her first year? Because it was the only pizza restaurant in the neighborhood and all the construction workers went there to eat the pizza. So that's the example that I use in the class. Okay, so which are we enjoying working on? Do we want to work more on math or do we want to work more on these language ones? If nobody cares, I'll just keep doing stuff. Go ahead.
I don't mind either, but language is good because I was thinking the same thing, that the language is going to be very different on the state test and it's going to be confusing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, I'm going to give you one question. And the reason why I want to give you this question is that it's like, okay, it's like a guaranteed point because it's on both the school test and the state test. Same question. And it's always on the test. A married couple bought a home for $250,000 and sold it 10 years later for $350,000. How much capital gain is not taxed? Okay. Now, that the wording is a little funny on this, right? Because how much capital gain is not taxed? All of the capital gain is not taxed. Okay? Because if IRS code says if a married couple sells their primary home and their profit, capital gains, is less than $500,000, they don't have to pay any tax on it. So, $0 of capital gains is taxable. All of their capital gains is untaxed. Okay, so you have to be careful with the language there. All right, so the answer to the question of how much, how much of their capital gain is not taxed, the answer is 100,000. If the question is how much of their capital gains is taxable, the answer is 0 is taxable. Okay, so this one is weird because this one is like a math question and a language question together. Now, the math is easy because all you're doing with the math is you're saying 350,000 sale price minus 250,000 purchase price equals 100,000 capital gains. Okay, so that $100,000 is not taxed because it's less than 500. Okay, so did I explain that clearly enough? Okay, because it's confusing,
Yes,
I
thank
think.
you.
Yeah, I think it's confusing.
Yeah, thank you. May I just ask you, doesn't matter how many times you buy and sell your house, like, or it doesn't if this is your primary house?
It doesn't matter how many times, but it matters how often you do it. Because, for example, you have to own the house. It has to be your primary residence, I believe, for at least 2 of the last 5 years. So
Mhm.
you can't like sell your house every year and get this. Does
Yeah,
a
that's
single
also my
person?
question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you know why? Like house flippers try to do that.
Mm.
The people on TV like flip this house and stuff like that. Like they try to do that because they'll like buy a house and they'll like live there while they're fixing it up. And then they sell it and they go, oh, like I won't be taxed on my profit. Yes, you will, because you can't do it like every year. You have to live there for at least 2 of the last 5 years.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Does a single person pay capital gains? Yes. For a single person, it is 250,000 capital gains that is not taxed. Good question. But for some reason on the test, they only ask about married people. I don't know why. All right. Do people feel good about the construction questions? Oh, here's one with language. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, this is a question that you will see on the state test. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The school test questions at pretty much any school you go to, the school test questions are going to be a lot shorter. And the reason why is that they usually write the exams on like an Excel sheet or something, and they have limited space. Whereas Department of State wrote the test years and years ago, probably on paper, and like with a word processor on paper, if you remember word processors. And they had unlimited space. So nowadays, most of the schools are going to have shorter questions and answers, whereas Department of State, they've got all the space in the world. So they have very, very long questions like this one. Which of the following analyses is a study of recently sold properties, currently competing listings, recently expired listings, buyer appeal, market position, assets and drawbacks, area market conditions, recommended terms, and market value range? Woohoo! You're not going to see anything like this on a school test. So let me give you choices. Cash flow, economic base, primary mortgage, or comparative market. So which analysis? So would it be a cash flow analysis, economic base analysis, primary mortgage analysis, or comparative market analysis?
I don't even see the question. I'm
You
sorry.
don't see it in the chat?
Oh, I gotta look in the chat. Sorry. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm putting all this stuff in the chat for you. And don't worry, at the end of the class, I'm gonna email the chat to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Some people haven't taken this chapter yet, so I understand. So the answer is comparative market analysis. Now, what a comparative market analysis is, they call it a CMA. Okay, now a CMA is a table that estimates the market value of a property by comparing it with similar properties nearby that are on the market now or sold recently. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I had a guy once who was a house seller, and he asked me to come over and tell him how much I thought his house was worth. So I came over, and I don't remember what I said to the guy, but I said something like, I think your house is worth $5 million or something. It was a house on the east side in Manhattan. And he goes, $5 million? Are you crazy? And I go, what, you think that's too much? He goes, no, it's too little. And he goes, last summer, a neighbor got married in their backyard, and we got to hear a string quartet for free. That has to add at least $1 million to the value. And Mary Tyler Moore was in a Broadway play, and she lived here for a summer in this house. That has to add at least $1 million to the value. Now, you probably don't even know who Mary Tyler Moore is or was. I mean, was an actress who's now deceased. And so the guy was going on and on. And, you could put an elevator over there. So that's got to add another $1 million. And he was coming up with all these crazy reasons. So what I had to do for the guy is to make this table and say, well, this house down the street has the same square footage as yours, same layout as yours. It's the same age as yours. And it sold for 4.9 million. And this one across the street is a similar size to yours. It looks the same from the outside, et cetera, et cetera. And it's in the same condition. And it sold for 5.1 million and so on. And so you put together a little table like that, and that's called a comparative market analysis. So a CMA is usually to estimate the market value of a property so that a seller knows how much to ask as their asking price. Okay, so the answer to this question is comparative market analysis, because when I was putting together the table for this guy, what am I going to look at? I'm going to look at recently sold properties, currently competing listings, recently expired listings, meaning properties that were on the market, but they took them off the market, buy or appeal, whether the house looks nice from the outside, market position, whether it's priced higher or lower than other similar properties, assets and drawbacks, like the string quartet is an asset, area market conditions, recommended terms, meaning does it have to be an all cash sale or can it be financed easily? And market value range, like how much negotiability is there in that neighborhood. All right. So all the things they're describing there are things you would think about when you're doing a comparative market analysis. All right. I'm going to give you some questions that are always, always, always on the test. And the reason why is that at least when you go in there, you're going to say, oh, I know this, I know this, I know this, because there are some questions you'll just always get. You'll always get them on the school test. You'll always get them on the state test. And here is one you will always get, whether you take school test or state test. And I think you know the answer. Persons with disabilities became a protected class. See, there they go with the typos again. You really just have to ignore it. Persons with disabilities became a protected class under which one of the following laws? Civil Rights Act of 1866, Civil Rights Act of 1964, Federal Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988, or Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. What's the answer? If you don't know the answer to this, you probably haven't taken the Fair Housing chapter yet. Okay, the answer is 1988 amendment to Fair Housing Act. Now, that law added disability and family status to protected groups. Now, family status does not mean marriage, it means kids. So the idea with this law is that before 1988, a landlord could say, like, you can't live here because you're disabled, or you can't live here because you have too many kids, or you can't live here because you don't have enough kids, or something like that. Okay, so that was the law that changed it. Now, the trouble is, all my students over the years have had trouble remembering this until I finally made up an easy way to remember it because it's always on the test. And the way that I remembered it is disabled people, wheelchairs, little kids, strollers. 1988 looks like wheels. The two eights look like wheels. So if you can remember the wheelchairs and the strollers, disabled and kids, then you've got 1988. So ever since I thought up that, like, it's real dopey. I mean, it's a stupid way to remember it. But ever since I thought that up, students have been getting the question right every time. So please remember that because it will definitely be on your test. I'm going to give you one that I got wrong. Uh, which law was the first attempt by the federal government to assure fairness in mortgage lending? And here are your choices. Civil Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, Sherman Act, or Statute of Frauds. So which law says that banks cannot discriminate against like all the protected groups? Thank you. Very good. See, I got that one wrong. The reason I got it wrong is because I thought, well, Civil Rights Act guarantees equal opportunity for like everything you can do in real estate. And it does, but it doesn't mention banks. So Civil Rights Act doesn't mention banks. Now, when they do the multiple choice, they will try to fool you on both school test and state test. So both tests will try to fool you. Especially the state test is very tricky. And they will put Sherman Act as a choice for fair housing questions. Sherman Act has nothing to do with fair housing. It has to do with commerce. Sherman Act outlaws price fixing in real estate. Or I should say by real estate brokerages. So the idea is that if I'm a broker, I have to negotiate my prices with every client. And I can't get together with all the other brokerages and go, yeah, let's never charge anybody less than 6% commission on a sale. Like, we can't do that because that's not fair to the public. The public is supposed to be able to negotiate their fees. All right. So for a fair housing question, don't choose Sherman Act, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or statute of frauds. Okay, Equal Credit Opportunity Act doesn't have to do with housing. It has to do, I mean, it does kind of have to do with loans, but it doesn't have to do with like landlord-tenant relations or with selling real estate. It only has to do with like getting bank credit. So Equal Opportunity Act is going to be wrong if people ask, if there's a question about fair housing. And statute of frauds says that some contracts have to be written. Okay. Now, I have a question for you while I'm going to the next. I don't watch the clock when I'm with you, and sometimes I get carried away and I just keep going and going and going, and I don't even know what time this class is supposed to end. Does anybody know what time this class is supposed to end? Is this an hour class or an hour and a half? Do you know? Don't know? Okay.
It was
Well, I'm
set
just gonna,
two
huh?
to three. It was set from 2 to 3 hours, so about 2 hours.
Oh, they said 2 to 3. You know why the school said that? Because they know that I don't quit. I get on a roll and I just keep going. So they don't want people to like make an appointment. Like if the class ends at 7, they don't want people to make an appointment at 7 because I might keep going, going, going. So they always say allow like 2 hours for the class. It probably will be till 8 because I think the class is supposed to end at 7 or 7:30, but the school knows that I always get carried away and I just keep going. So I hope everybody will stay with me. If everybody leaves me, then I'll have to end the class. But if you stick with me, I'll just keep going, going, going. Okay. Because like I said, I don't like teachers who watch the clock. I think that's really bad. Okay, I'm going to give you a question that you will see on both the school test and the state test. Which characteristic has to do with liens? So I'm going to give you choices. Which characteristic has to do with liens? They are encroachments. All encumbrances are liens. They're involuntary, or they're related to debt. What's the answer? I think this is chapter 3. They're trying to trick us. Okay. So the correct answer happens to be D, but let's go through it, okay? So a lien is a debt attached to a building. Okay. So for example, if I don't pay my income tax, it's a debt, but it's a debt attached to me. If I don't pay my mortgage, it's a debt, but it's a debt attached to the building. Or if I don't pay my water bill, it's a debt, but it's a debt attached to the building. Okay. So a lien is a debt attached to a building. If I don't pay my mortgage, the bank can take the building as payment. If I sell the building and I don't pay my water bill, the new owner gets stuck with the water bill because the water bill is attached to the building, not to the person. So a lien is a debt that's attached to a building, not to a person. Okay, so the correct answer is D. Now, a lot of people choose B, and it's understandable why they would, but the state is trying to trick you, okay? Because an encumbrance is a legal or financial problem attached to real estate. A lien is a kind of encumbrance. Other encumbrances could be things like easements, title disputes, lawsuits, etc. So all liens are encumbrances, but not all encumbrances are liens. So they're trying to trick us here. So I think that when people go to law school, there's like a little thing that they teach them, which is that all poodles, all poodles are dogs, but not all dogs are poodles. All liens are encumbrances, but not all encumbrances are liens. So now we don't have to worry because they can't trick us on the test, because when you go to take either the school test or the state test, this question is on both. When you go to take the test, you already know about this little trick and they can't trick you. Here's another one that's on both the school test and the state test. You are going to find that the two tests are very similar, but the language on the school test is easier than the state test. So let's do the next one, which is Regulation Z. And I will give you choices. So Regulation Z Is it Fannie Mae? Is it RESPA? Is it Sherman Act? Or is it Truth in Lending Act? Okay, now here is a similar question from the state test. So Regulation Z is Truth in Lending Act, okay? Regulation Z is part of a great big huge federal law called Consumer Credit Protection Act. And Regulation Z is Truth in Lending Act. It says that if an ad specifies particular loan terms or specific loan amounts, or uses complicated language, this triggers a required definition. So for example, if I say APR only 5%, well, the average person doesn't know what APR is. So I have to define that APR is annual percentage rate. And then 5%, well, how do we know it's 5%? It's 5% if your credit score is over 700. It's 5% if you don't pay any points. It's 5%. I mean, under what circumstances is it 5%? It's 5% if you qualify. It's 5% if you get mortgage insurance. I mean, what's the story? So if you said something, if an ad said something like APR only 5%, they would have to define APR and explain under which circumstances a borrower could get 5%. Okay, so I'm going to now give you the state version of the same question. Which of the following regulates real estate advertisements that include financial terms? Federal Regulation Z, local real estate boards, Department of Commerce, or Consumer Protection Board? There's no such thing as the Consumer Protection Board. They mean the Consumer Protection Bureau. Thank you. Absolutely right, Kimberly. So the answer is good old Regulation Z. Now, I have another one for you along these same lines. From the state test. According to Regulation Z, what must advertisements for real property that include a triggering term, such as the amount or percentage of any down payment, also include? Location of the property, condition of the property, appraised value of the property, or details of the amount or percentage of the down payment. Because a lot of people don't know what a down payment is. I think I didn't know until I got my real estate license. Okay, very good. So the answer is D. All right. Here's one that is always on both the school test and the state test. Who is mainly responsible for protecting wetlands in New York State? Who is mainly responsible for protecting wetlands in New York State? Army Corps of Engineers, Audubon Society, Department of Health, or Landmarks Preservation? Correct. Very good. Very good. Now, the reason why is they are civil engineers. So they handle things like drainage projects, levees, like in Louisiana, dams, stuff like that. While we are on the subject, there's another question that is always on the state test. And a lot of students get it wrong. Nobody likes this question, but I will give it to you. A lovely old theater, which local residents want to remain in its present state, is being put up for sale. They must appeal to which agency? And I'm going to give you choices. Zoning Department, Building Department, Architectural Review Board, or Landmark Preservation Commission? Very good. Most people get this wrong. Most people want to choose the landmarks. So I'm going to tell you why the landmarks is wrong. Landmarks is wrong because only one city in our state has Landmarks Preservation Commission, and that's New York City. But almost all cities have Architectural Review Board. Also, landmarks only has power over buildings that are designated a landmark. And this theater they don't say that it's a landmark in the question. They say it's lovely and old. Okay, so very good. I couldn't fool you on that one. Okay, here's another one. This one is the state test, and I'm giving it to you because I want to dramatize that you will see things on the test that are typos, that are spelled wrong, that are bad grammar, and so forth. So, which federal agency administers National Flood Insurance Program? Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Interior, Department of Homeland Security, or Federal Emergency Management Association, FEMA? Well, we kind of know this because of all the hurricanes that have been happening in the past couple of weeks. Thank you. Answer is D. Answer is D, FEMA. But they have the name of FEMA wrong. It is Federal Emergency Management Agency. So sometimes my students see this question and they think that Department of State is trying to trick them. And because there's no such organization as Federal Emergency Management Association, they think it's got to be the wrong answer. But it is the right answer. It's just a mistake by Department of State. So FEMA is the right answer. Choose option D. It's just a little mistake on the full name. Okay, now here's a question that is on every test. Which state agency is in charge of drinking water and wastewater treatment? Very good. Environmental Protection Agency is a good choice, but it's not one of the choices. You know why? Because EPA is federal, and the question is which state agency. So I'm going to give you a bunch of state agencies. Okay, there are your choices. Department of Environmental Conservation, Municipal Engineer, Department of Health, or Department of State. And Kimberly got it right. Okay, it is definitely Department of Health. Now, maybe you remember in the course what I said, that if you're going to think about water, like water is what you drink every day, right? If you're going to think about water, who do you want in charge of your water quality? Do you want the environmentalists? Do you want the engineers? Or do you want the doctors? Okay, give me the doctors. I want the doctors in charge of my water, right? And all the doctors are over in Department of Health. Okay, so Department of Health is the answer. This is always on the test. I don't know why. I don't know why they think it's so important, but for some reason, Department of State does. So because the school tries to copy Department of State, it's going to be on the school test as well. Oh, by the way, I just thought of something. I got a question. One of the students asked me, and I didn't get a chance to answer. One of the students asked me if this course has a textbook. And the answer is that one of the things that I like about RELNY is that they don't make the students spend money. So like you don't have to buy a textbook if you don't want to. The transcripts of each lecture you can download them for free. So that's one of the things that I like about RELNY, but we do have a textbook. Okay, so this is the textbook. So if you wanted a textbook, you can get it. And what I do with my textbooks that I write is I put my name, but I also put my picture because sometimes students forget my name or like they're not sure if I'm the same Kristen or something, but they usually remember what I look like. So I usually put a picture of me on the front of the book. Now, this book has about twice as much content in it than the course does. So the whole idea is that probably people get this book if they want to learn more or if they want to look up, like use it as a reference book or something like that. So somebody asked me the other day if we have a textbook for the course, and we do. They sell it on Amazon. You're not required to buy it. You only buy it if you want to. So there you go. One of my friends saw the book and she said she thinks I look like King Kong. Then okay, that's the King Kong book. Okay, how can I download chats? I get redirected to YouTube. Well, when you're in the RELNY course, no, wait, are you talking about the chat from the Zoom that we're doing right now? Or are you talking about the RELNY course and you want to download the transcript? Oh, the one I'm going to email? I'm going to email it to your, I'm going to cut and paste it into an email and send it to everybody in the class. So you'll have it in the body of the email. Oh, the previous ones? I don't even have the previous ones. The school has them. So for the previous ones, you would have to ask the school, and the person at the school, if you have a problem, if you have any problem with school stuff, um, you can contact Deb. Does everybody know Deb? Um, yeah, okay. And her email is pretty gosh darn easy. It's deb@relny.com. Okay. Yeah, so write her back and go, Deb, what's going on? Yeah. I've never actually met Deb. I've interacted with her. I've interacted with her like, by text and email and stuff, but I've never actually met Deb. But all the students really love her. They say that she's really, really good at customer service. All right. You know what else I think is really good is, do people know about the ERM, the exam readiness meter? The exam readiness meter is really good. Uh, I think it was developed by RELNY. I don't think any other school has it. I've never seen any other school that has it. I'm pretty sure they invented it. And what it does is it records your answers. Like every time you take a little quiz or a little chapter test or something, it records your answers and it records how many you get right and how many you get wrong. And so it estimates what score you're likely to get on the school test and the state test. Now, I think this school started about 2 years ago. And in the 2 years, I have observed that the exam readiness meter is incredibly accurate. Like I'll say to somebody, like, what's your exam readiness meter? And they'll say 82, and they take the test and they get an 84. I mean, it's really, really accurate. Yeah.
But I when you do the quiz after each chapter or module, and you can do it again if you. So which score are they taking? Are they
Well,
taking the
they
English
take,
now or the chapter?
well, they're going to take the scores. Like if you do it again, then they're going
Mhm.
to set, you're going to improve your ERM because the second time you do it, you're going to get the answers right, huh?
Right.
So like
But
I had one guy who I think his ERM was like a 72 or something, and he was worried that he might not pass the test. So he went back and he redid a whole bunch of things, and he swear to God, he raised his ERM to 100. Like this guy would not stop until he got every single answer right. So as long as you go back and get every answer right, then your ERM will keep going up, up, up. Which makes sense in a way, right? Because like at the beginning, you didn't know the answer. And then when you take it again, now you do know the answer. So like the ERM should reflect that you now know the answer. Yeah. So the same guy, okay, he his ERM was 100, and he wrote me and he was angry because he got a 96. And I said, like, don't you have anything better to do? Like, you're really upset that your ERM was off by 4 points, or you're really upset that you didn't get 100. I mean, you got a 96? Does it really matter? So I guess some people are perfectionists. Okay, I've got another one for you. This question, if I remember, it says quizzes don't count because you can redo chapter and practice counts, and the redos on the practice exam almost certain. I'm not sure which, I'm not sure how the ERM is constructed, whether it's constructed with the quizzes and the lecture tests or just the lecture and chapter tests. I'm not sure. You could ask, that's another thing you could ask Deb. Unfortunately, the only thing I do is write the courses. So I don't really know how the school is run or anything like that. I, I'm just the teacher. So if you have administrative questions about how the school works, you kind of have to ask the school. Uh, okay. Yes, I was about to give a question. So who is exempt? I'm going to give it again. Who is exempt from the requirement to have a real estate license in New York State? They are always, this particular question that I'm giving you is from the school test, but you will see lots of questions like this on the state test. So here are your choices, and we got to hand it to Craig because he's got the answer right before I even gave choices. So the choices are the attorney who does not sponsor salespersons, the commercial mortgage broker, or the property manager for several owners, or the tenant relocator. So yes, the answer is the attorney. So attorneys are automatically brokers. But if an attorney wants to open a brokerage and hire salespersons, then they have to get a license. Now, it's not because they're going to make the lawyers take the class or anything. They don't make them take the class or the test or anything. What they have to do is they have to send $185 to Albany, and Albany gives them a license with a broker license number. Okay, so the reason is that Department of State they call themselves DOS. Department of State in Albany needs to match sales license numbers, the salesperson license numbers with the license number of the broker they're working for. Okay, now a lot of people don't know that we, salespersons and brokers, are allowed to do, we're allowed to arrange commercial mortgages for other people. But only commercial mortgages, not residential. The reason is consumer protection, because Department of State is concerned that ordinary people who are buying a house or something, they don't really understand that much about the profession. So they really need someone who has all the extra education and experience in mortgages. So if a person has no license at all, they can't arrange any mortgages for someone else for payment. If they have real estate license, they can do commercial mortgages only. If they have mortgage license, they can do all mortgages, both commercial and residential. That's on the test. In fact, I wouldn't be telling you if it weren't on the test. Like every single thing that I say is on either the school test or the state test. Here's a question that is on both the school test and the state test. Sam can cross Pam's land to reach his landlocked home. In other words, he's got water on one side, and so there's no way that he can reach his home from the main road. So what kind of easement does Sam have? And your choices: if you took the chapter on easements, then you probably remember that there are 6 kinds of easement, but they fall into 3 pairs. What kind of easement does Sam have? Affirmative in gross, dominant appurtenant, negative appurtenant, or servient appurtenant? I'm just waiting. Take a sip of my drink. Okay. Sam has dominant or pertinent, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay. Engross is usually government or utility. So Sam is not the government or Con Ed or Verizon or anybody like that. So Sam's easement is appurtenant. Dominant is the one who gets the easement. Servient is the one who has to give the easement. So Sam in this story is dominant and Pam is servient because she has to let Sam drive on her land. Negative is an easement to not do something, like not build a fence. Affirmative is an easement to do something, like cross Pam's land. So Sam's easement is appurtenant, dominant, affirmative. Okay. That seems a little confusing to me. So let me see if I can give you the table. I'm going to give you the I made a little table about the different kinds of easements. So I'm going to see if I can give that to you right now. Okay. Okay, now some of the questions that you are going to see on both the school test and the state test are like so easy that you can answer them in a millisecond. So here's an example. What is the age requirement to be a real estate broker in New York State? Is it 18, 19, 20, or 21? Thank you. Okay, so this is one of those that, yes, so it's 18 for a salesperson and 20 for a broker. Now, the reason that can be confusing sometimes is if you don't read the question carefully, you might think they're asking about a salesperson instead of a broker. So in this case, they're asking about a broker. Sometimes they ask about a salesperson. And the other reason it's tricky is that I have seen some books where they make a mistake and they say that the age for a broker is 21, which is not. Okay, so we want to be sure that the answer is a salesperson must be 18 and a broker must be 20. Okay. Now, the reason that I gave you that super easy one was because what you will find on the test is that some questions are really hard and like you have to think about them. And other questions are so easy that you can just answer them, boom, like right away. And then you can go on to the rest of the test. So you don't have to spend a lot of time on every single question. Some of them are just going to be really, really easy. Like I'll give you another example of a really easy one. Um, a an agent who represents the purchaser is always. And here are your choices. An agent who represents the purchaser is always buyer's agent, universal agent, co-broker, or listing broker. What's the answer? Well, hang on. If they're representing the purchaser is who? Yeah. Purchaser is the buyer. It's almost too easy. You know what I mean? Like you think it has to be a trick, or you think it has to be more complicated than that. Okay, so some of them are really easy. Now, what they typically do is they usually put all the math questions on the last page. So if you are a person who doesn't like math too much, what you might want to do when you take the state test, not the school test, but the state test, the state test is given on paper, and you might want to go to the very last page and do the math questions first and get them out of the way, and then you'll have time to take the rest of the test. Because what happens to some people is they take the whole test and like they take their time, and then boom, on the last page, they get hit with these math questions and they run out of time. All right. So the math questions are usually all on the last page of the state test. So it's a good idea to go to the last page first and do the math, and then do the rest of the test, so you don't run out of time. Okay. Now, I did just look at the clock and it's 7:57. So two things I want to tell you. One is, did everybody give me your email address so that I can send you a copy of this chat that we've been doing? And if you already gave me your email address, you don't have to do it again. But if you didn't give me your email address, please do. And later this evening, I will send you a copy of everything we've gone over. All right. Second thing I want to talk to you about is that this school, like I have taught for a boatload of schools. I've taught for probably maybe 10 different schools. And of all the schools that I have taught for, this is, in my opinion, the best school. So I went uh I went to Groupon and I reviewed them, but I can only review them once. So if you like RELNY, it would be a real nice thing if you would give them a good review. Like they gave me this link so that I could go to Facebook and give them a good review and say, best school I ever taught for and stuff. So if you like this school, it would be a very nice gesture if you would go and give them a good review. And if they get good reviews, maybe they'll keep hiring me to write courses. Okay, let's do some more. We're gonna go as long as everybody's with me till the last minute, we're gonna keep going. All right, here's one. One of the things that they try to do to you on the state test is they use the abbreviation PITY, and they're hoping you don't know what PITY is, but I bet you do. So I'm going to give you choices. Oh, no, that's fine if you can't participate. Don't worry because like I I said at the beginning of the class that it doesn't matter. You can learn stuff at the beginning of the course, you can learn stuff at the end of the course. It doesn't matter. It could be a preview or it could be a review. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's good to go over this. You gotta learn it sometime. You can learn it sooner or you can learn it later. We don't care. So thank you, Craig. That is absolutely right. Principal, interest, tax, and insurance. So I'm going to give you choices. All right. So So is it a mortgage cancellation clause, government-sponsored enterprise, abbreviation for mortgage insurance, or a mortgage where the bank pays property tax and insurance on behalf of the borrower? What's the answer? Thank you. The answer is D. Okay, so PITY stands for principal, interest, tax, and insurance. When a borrower pays PITY, the bank keeps principal and interest because it's the bank's money. The bank pays local real estate tax and insurance to the government and the insurance company on behalf of the borrower. Okay, so that makes it easy because a lot of people who are homeowners, like it's easier for them to just make one payment every month than to figure out, oh no, like I've got to pay quarterly tax and I've got to pay my insurance twice a year, and everybody gets confused about who's paying what to whom. So it's much easier. It's much easier for most consumers, for the bank to just handle all the payments. All right. I'm just checking to see if I have a typo and yeah, I do. I have a typo. I called them consumers instead of consumers. Okay. All right. I'm going to do one more. I know we're going over time. It happens to me every time. In real estate, which is not prohibited by the Sherman Act? This is the school test. Now, the Sherman Act we spoke about earlier, and we said that the Sherman Act has to do with commerce. It has to do with business. So, in real estate, which is not prohibited by Sherman Act? Dual agency, group boycott, price fixing, or tie-in? Which one's okay? Which one is perfectly legal? And the others are against their violation of federal law. Thank you. Thank you. Well, everybody should thank Laura because she's the one who's taking us home. She got the answer right, so we can end the class. Okay, does anybody have anything to say to me or ask me before we get going?
No, thank you so much for the lesson.
Sure. You see, you don't see the answer because I didn't hit enter yet. I just hit enter, so there you got the answer. You know, how does my dog know that the class is over? I haven't figured it out. Like she was sound asleep next to me this whole time and she just jumped up when I said the class was over. I don't know how she figures it out. Okay. Now, yeah, she's very cute. So, when I send you the email tonight, you will have my email address. So if you come up with any questions or concerns or anything, you can write me. Okay? So I hope to see some of you again. Those of you who are getting ready to take the test, please let me know how it goes. Like, for example, when you go to take the state test, they're not going to tell you your score right away. So I don't mean that I want you to write me and tell me if you passed or what your score was on the school test. I don't mean that. What I mean is tell me how you felt about the test. Like when you took the state test, did you feel like you had plenty of time? Did you feel good about it? Do you feel confident? Were there areas that were hard for you? You know, I want to hear how my students, how your experience goes. Okay, and when you pass, you know, please let me know and I'll be very, very happy. So please let me know. Okay, so you want to say goodbye to my dog? There's my dog. There she is. That's my little Boney Maroney. She realized the class wasn't ending, so she came back. Her name is Boney Maroney. I think I mentioned her in the course a few times, so. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Okay. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.